All right, so you brought in some pretty wild sources this time around, and it looks like we're going to be diving deep into this whole cyber attack thing on X. The platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, at first glance, it might seem like just, some tech hiccup preventing people from tweeting. But looking at what you've gathered here, there's some pretty big hints that it could be a lot more than just that, something a lot more deliberate.
Yeah, so let's start with the basics. Like what actually went down with this cyber attack?
Well, X was hit by something called a DDoS attack, which stands for Distributed Denial of Service Attack. And basically imagine like someone pouring a huge digital fire hose at X's servers, just flooding it with so much traffic that like real users can't even get through. And that's basically what caused all the outages.
And Elon Musk himself came out and said something about this whole thing, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He called it a massive cyber attack. And he even said that it would have taken a ton of resources to pull off something like this, hinting that it might have been like a large coordinated group or even like a nation state actor involved, like some government-backed entity, maybe a super sophisticated hacking group working directly with a country's intelligence agency, something like that.
Whoa, that's kind of like straight out of a spy movie or something.
Yeah.
Didn't Musk mention something about the attack possibly coming from Ukraine or something?
Yeah, he did say that the IP addresses, which are like digital fingerprints of the devices involved, seem to be coming from that general area. And that's where things get even more interesting because apparently Rumble, that video platform was also hit with a similar DDoS attack around the same time. So you got to wonder if there's like a connection, like a broader campaign going on.
So we've got this cyber attack that could be coordinated targeting these platforms like X and Rumble. So who's behind all this and why?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's where all these sources, you got to start to like disagree with each other. Some of them, and this is where that whole Ukraine thing comes in, think that Ukraine and its NATO allies might be like getting back at Elon Musk.
Wait, hold on. Getting back at Elon Musk, what does he have to do with any of this?
Well, Musk has said some, let's just say, controversial things about the whole war in Ukraine. And he even suggested that the U.S. should like leave NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So needless to say, he hasn't made a lot of friends in Ukraine or, with the people who support their cause. But it's important to remember that this is just speculation. We don't have any like solid evidence linking Ukraine or any specific actor to these attacks.
Okay, got to keep that in mind. But one of the sources, Mike Benz, I think takes this Ukraine theory even further, right?
Yeah. Benz makes a pretty bold claim. He like connects these cyber attacks to this group of CIA-trained cyber hackers in Ukraine. He even compares them to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, the ones that the U.S. trained and funded to fight against the Soviet Union. So basically, he's suggesting that, what goes around comes around, and that the training of those hackers might be coming back to bite the U.S. in a way no one expected.
Whoa, that's a bold claim.
Yeah.
Even if we don't have all the answers about who did this and why, it really makes you think about how vulnerable these online platforms are, and how much power they have in shaping what people talk about and think about.
Oh, for sure. It's no coincidence that both X and Rumble have become like these major players in the online world. They're not just places to share cat videos anymore. They have real influence on what people see and hear, the stories they believe, and ultimately their understanding of the world.
It's like that old saying, information is power, but these days it feels more like it's about who controls where that information goes, like who's controlling where people's attention is going.
Exactly. And that's what makes all of this so important. Think about it. The things you pay attention to, the information you take in, it shapes how you see the world, what you believe, even how you act. If someone can mess with what you see here online, they can basically change your understanding of reality itself.
That's kind of scary when you really think about it. I mean, these days we're just bombarded with so much information everywhere you look. It's so easy to just get overwhelmed and just go with whatever catches our eye.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we need to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
We need to understand that our attention is valuable. It's like a commodity these days in the digital age. And there are these powerful forces out there. They're fighting for that control. So we need to be careful about what we're taking in online, questioning the information we see and looking for different perspectives. But we can talk more about that later.
Okay, so we've got this cyber attack, maybe connected to Ukraine, maybe because of some of the things Elon Musk has said. And on top of that, it brings up these really big questions about who controls information and how that shapes our reality. That's a lot to unpack. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, Let's talk about the big guy in the room. Yeah, the billionaire with the rocket company, Elon Musk himself. He seems to be right at the center of all of this. So, what do all these sources say about him and his role in all of this?
Well, one thing that really stands out is just how much influence Elon Musk has. He's got a huge following on social media,
Okay.
and people really seem to listen to what he has to say. He's definitely a controversial figure, but he's also captured people's imaginations in a way that few others have.
Yeah, and it's not just about the rockets and electric cars, right? The sources you brought show that he's become like this voice for certain groups of people, especially when it comes to stuff like government spending.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The polls you shared are pretty interesting. They show that a surprisingly large chunk of the American public actually agrees with his ideas about cutting government spending, even if it means cutting programs that they themselves might benefit from.
It's like people are so frustrated with how things are being run that they're willing to try something new, even if it means taking a risk.
That's a really good point.
Uh,
It seems like there's this growing disconnect between everyday people and the government.
yeah.
People are tired of the same old political games and the feeling that their voices aren't being heard. They see waste, they see things not working right, and they're looking for someone to come in and shake things up.
And Elon Musk, with his whole, tell it, like, his personality really seems to represent that whole shaking things up attitude. He's not afraid to challenge the way things are done, whether it's launching rockets, building electric cars, or tweeting about cutting government spending.
Exactly, and that's what makes him such a fascinating part of all this. He's not just some tech CEO or a billionaire. He's become this symbol, a symbol for people who are like disillusioned with the way things are and are looking for a different way forward.
And speaking of challenging the status quo, we can't forget about Donald Trump and his very vocal support for Elon Musk. The fact that he bought Tesla stock as a show of confidence really says a lot about what's going on here.
Yeah, that definitely adds another layer to this whole story. You've got these two larger-than-life figures, both of whom have challenged the norm, and they both attracted these huge groups of supporters and like just as many people who can't stand them. But for now, let's stick to this cyber attack and what it tells us about this battle for control in the digital world.
All right, so we've got the cyber attack potentially from Ukraine, maybe because of Elon Musk's opinions. We've got Mike Benz with his theory about CIA-trained hackers. And we've got a public that seems to be getting more and more disillusioned with the establishment and drawn to people like Elon Musk who promise something different. Where do we go from here?
Well, the sources you've given us really raise a lot of important questions. If controlling attention is a form of power, like we discussed, then who are the players in this game? Who's trying to take control? And what does that mean for regular people like you?
It's a complicated situation, and it's only getting more complicated. That's why it's more important than ever to be informed, to think about the information you're seeing, and to really analyze it all.
Okay, so you're saying we need to be more aware, more critical, and more discerning when it comes to what we see online. But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we become more informed and engaged without getting totally overwhelmed by all the information out there?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll definitely dig into deeper as we keep going through these sources. But for now, I'll just leave you with this thought. Think about who and what is grabbing your attention in the digital world. Is it helping you learn new things? Is it giving you more power? Or is it subtly like messing with your perceptions and pushing you towards someone else's agenda? It's
Hmm.
something worth thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we're all swimming in this giant ocean of information, and it's easy to get swept away by the currents, without even realizing that those currents are often controlled by powerful forces with their own agendas.
And those forces aren't always the ones we traditionally think of as being in control, right? You mentioned earlier that Elon Musk is kind of a disruptive force, and these sources really highlight how he's challenging established power structures in some pretty significant ways.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely shaking things up.
Yeah.
His acquisition of X alone was a huge power move.
Hmm.
It gave him control of a platform with massive reach and influence. And then you've got his outspoken views on things like government spending, NATO involvement in the Ukraine war, even cryptocurrency. He's not afraid to ruffle some feathers, and that makes him both a target and a threat to those who benefit from the status quo.
Yeah, it's almost like he's become this lightning rod, attracting both praise and criticism, sometimes in equal measure. And it's not just his actions that are disruptive, it's his whole way of thinking. He seems to approach problems with a different mindset, questioning assumptions and looking for innovative solutions.
Right, that's a key part of his appeal. He's not bound by conventional wisdom. He's willing to think outside the box,
Yes.
and that resonates with a lot of people,
I don't
especially
know.
those who feel like the current systems aren't working for them.
It's like he represents a different way of doing things, a departure from the old, tired ways of the establishment. He's a symbol of hope for those who feel disenfranchised, a maverick who's not afraid to take on the powers that be.
And that makes him a powerful figure. Even if some of his ideas are controversial, he's shown that it's possible to challenge the status quo, disrupt the narrative, and build something new.
But that kind of disruption comes with risks, right? I mean, he's made some powerful enemies along the way, and as we've seen with this cyber attack, he's become a target.
There's always a backlash to any kind of significant change. Those who benefit from the existing power structures will fight to maintain their control, and they have a lot of tools at their disposal. Cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, even legal and regulatory hurdles can be used to stifle innovation and silence dissent.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? This potential for disruption and the pushback that comes with it. It makes you wonder, how do we navigate this increasingly complex landscape where traditional power structures are being challenged, new players are emerging, and the battle for control is playing out in the digital realm?
It's a challenge for sure, but I think the key is to stay informed, to be critical of the information we consume, and to engage in thoughtful dialogue. We need to be aware of the forces at play, the motivations behind the narratives we're being fed, and the potential consequences of our actions. It's not about blindly following any one leader or ideology, but about developing our own critical thinking skills and making informed choices based on a balanced understanding of the issues.
It sounds like we need to become more discerning consumers of information, almost like investigative journalists in our own lives, constantly questioning the sources, verifying the facts, and seeking out diverse perspectives.
Exactly. It's not enough to passively absorb whatever's presented to us. We need to actively engage with the information we encounter to dig deeper, ask questions, and form our own conclusions. And we need to be open to the possibility that we might be wrong, that our initial perceptions might be influenced by biases or hidden agendas. It's a process of continuous learning and self-reflection.
It's almost like a constant recalibration, right? Adjusting our compass as we navigate this ever-changing information landscape.
That's a great analogy. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask the right questions and to keep an open mind. And it's about recognizing that the battle for control of reality is ongoing, and we all have a role to play in shaping the outcome.
So it's not just about being a passive observer. It's about taking an active role in shaping the narrative, becoming a participant rather than just a spectator.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we have agency, that our choices matter, and that even small actions can have a ripple effect. We don't have to be Elon Musk or Donald Trump to make a difference. We can all contribute to shaping a more informed, engaged, and equitable digital landscape.
That's an empowering thought. It's not about feeling overwhelmed by the complexity. It's about recognizing that we have the power to make a difference, even in small ways.
Absolutely. It's about shifting our mindset from passive consumers to active participants, from feeling powerless to feeling empowered, and from being manipulated to being informed and engaged.
All right, so we've talked about the cyber attack on X, the possible motives behind it, and the broader implications for control of reality in the digital age. We've also explored the role of Elon Musk as this disruptive force, and the public's growing appetite for change when it comes to government spending. It's a lot to process.
It's a fascinating case study with a lot of layers, and as we discussed, it raises some really important questions about power control and accountability in this digital age.
It's clear that we're living in a time of rapid change and uncertainty. The old ways of doing things are being challenged and new players are emerging, and as we saw with the cyber attack on X, this battle for control is playing out in the digital realm where information is the ultimate weapon.
It's a complex and dynamic landscape, and it's more important than ever to be informed, engaged, and critical. We need to be aware of the forces at play, the motivations behind the narratives we're being fed, and the potential consequences of our actions.
It's about taking responsibility for our own information consumption, for the choices we make, and for the world we want to create.
It's about recognizing that we're not just passive consumers of information, we're active participants in shaping the digital landscape and the future of our society.
It's about empowering ourselves to be informed, engaged, and critical thinkers, to question the narratives we're being fed, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to use our voices to amplify the truths that matter most.
It's about reclaiming control of our attention, our information, and our reality.
And that's a powerful thought. It's a reminder that even in the face of complexity and uncertainty, we have the power to make a difference.
Absolutely. We all had a role to play in shaping a more informed, engaged, and equitable digital future. It starts with each of us taking responsibility for our own actions and for the world we want to create.
And that's an inspiring message to end on, but we're not quite done yet, are we?
Not quite. We've explored a lot of the complexities and challenges of navigating this digital landscape.
Yeah.
But the question remains, what can you as an individual do to make sense of it all? How do you ensure that you're not just a pawn in someone else's game?
That's a great question. Let's delve into that in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've been talking about like taking control, becoming active participants instead of just letting the digital world kind of wash over us. But I think a lot of people listening are probably like, where do I even start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've talked about a lot, and it can definitely feel overwhelming. But the good news is that even small changes can make a difference.
Okay, so like, what's step one? Where do we even begin?
Well, it all starts with awareness. We need to understand like the forces at play, the motivations behind all the information that's constantly coming at us. Think of it like this. Every time you go online, you're basically stepping into this marketplace of ideas. But it's a marketplace where the vendors aren't always honest about what they're selling.
So we need to be like smarter shoppers, more careful about what we buy into.
Exactly. Start by asking yourself, like, who's behind this website, this article, this social media post? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to teach me something, convince me of something, or just entertain me?
It's like reading the label before you buy something, right? You want to know what's in it, where it came from, who made it.
Exactly. And just like with those labels, sometimes the important information is kind of hidden. You might have to dig a little deeper to find out what's really going on.
So don't just take things at face value. Do your own research. Look at different sources and see if the information checks out.
Right? And be careful about information that just tells you what you already believe. We all have our biases, but it's important to challenge those biases, to look for perspectives that might make you a little uncomfortable.
It's about getting out of our echo chambers, right? Those online spaces where everybody agrees, and we never have to hear anything that challenges our beliefs.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding different opinions. It's about really engaging with them. Listen to what other people are saying. Even if you don't agree with them, you might learn something new, or at least you'll understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, it's about actually having a conversation, not just shouting at each other from across the internet.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to change your mind. If you find new information that challenges what you believe, be open to changing your perspective. That's how we grow. That's how we learn.
So it's a process, right? This whole thing about becoming more informed and engaged, it's not something you just do overnight.
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing, learning, unlearning, and relearning. And it's something we should all be working towards, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
Because at the end of the day, the quality of our information, the quality of our conversations, it shapes the world we live in.
That's a really good point. The choices we make about what information we consume, the platforms we use, the stories we share, it all matters. It shapes the world we create, both online and offline.
So this whole cyber attack on X, it wasn't just about a website being down for a few hours. It was a wake-up call. It reminded us how much power information has and how important it is to be careful about how we interact with it.
I couldn't agree more. This battle for control is happening all around us in the digital world, and we're all part of it, whether we know it or not.
So the question is, are you just going to sit back and watch, or are you going to get involved? Are you going to let yourself be controlled, or are you going to take charge of your own information, your own attention, your own reality?
The choice is yours. Use it wisely.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up our deep dive into this whole cyber attack on X and all the crazy stuff it makes us think about. Thanks for joining us on this journey. And remember, stay curious, stay critical, and stay engaged.